So here we are back with Nathan Hill at another impromptu, review, interview. I guess it's a combination of the both. But this time we're looking at Revenge of the Gweilo, his fifth feature film? Your fifth feature film that you've written and directed?
Writer, director, produced probably 6 or 7. I'll have to back and have a look.
Well, you lost count, I guess.
I've lost count of like which one in which context, because like there's somewhere it's just writer director, then there's somewhere it's writer director actor, then there's a writer producer, and it's all I've got them all in different categories. But I think it's probably working back. I think it's probably 7 or 8 in this particular paradigm.
This is the latest film that you've directed, aside from the 2 that haven't come out yet, Eye Portrait, Colorblind.
This is the latest headline title. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. But what would you say, how different are you from the very first time that you yelled action to now? What did you learn in between now and then and now, vice versa?
I'll tell you what it is, my friend. It's interesting because the Revenge of the Gweilo, for me personally, the movie I wanted to make when I was a teenager, because the very, very first film that I ever made in a serious kind of sense is a short film that goes for half an hour called The Samurai. Mm-hmm. And I did it when I was about 16. And it was a huge, task to undergo, making a movie that goes for half an hour when you're that age. It's almost ridiculous. Most guys are making 2-3 minute shorts. But that's technically my first film. So the fact that my first film was 30 minutes, I think that kind of, for the record, says a lot. And the Gweilo, all my life later is the kind of movie I dreamt about, where you've actually got professionals and you've got a full-length piece and you've got the costumes and the sets and locations and everything else that you need to make a proper film. Like when you're a teenager doing your first one, you haven't got much. I think I had a couple of locations, handful of guys from school and the neighborhood and whatnot, and a couple of karate gis, and away we went, but we set a lot of it in the park. It was a cool little story, though, because it was about two students at the same school whose sensei had died, and they were fighting over possession of an ancient samurai statue that was passed down from generation to generation through their master. Mm-hmm. And, one guy, it's kind of good guy, bad guy, and the bad guy kind of ends up stealing the statue. And so there's a hunt to get it back, and it ends up in all these fights. It's a wicked little story. It was the same with The Hidden, like a really cool premise. Like if you imagine a budget with these little films, I think you'd actually have something quite cool. But they're coming out of my adolescence. So Gweilo is really the movie that I imagined to make back then, but now obviously on a mature and grander scale. So for that reason, I really love it.
And when you were actually directing Gweilo, let's go back to the very beginning when you did Samurai. On the set, what was the atmosphere? How different is the atmosphere? Not necessarily in relation to the technology, but also how confident are you on set, and how confident are people to relay stuff to you on set?
Very electric. I mean, the energy in the air for Gweilo, it was electric and it was very infectious, and there were sort of actors coming onto set and they didn't want to leave. I actually remember, and this is the first time it's ever happened in my life, where I was on set one day and I actually had to tell 2 actresses to hurry up and leave, because we'd shot with them in the morning and I was doing other stuff in the afternoon, and they just wouldn't go. And I was like, well, yes, okay, cool. Most people want to, they've got a lot on and they're busy, and this is an indie and you just want to do your scene and get the hell out of there or get your show reel, as an actor. Yeah. But they was just so electric that they were just like, oh, can we stay for lunch? And, oh, what's going on next? And, oh, can I watch the next scene? And it was very exciting, bro. And I think everyone was on the pulse. They knew we had something special, and you always pray to get that magic, I should say, lightning in a bottle. There were moments where we're like, oh, my God, we just got some lightning, whether it amounted to, this gigantic lightning bolt in the bottle, I'm not sure. You got to judge for yourself, but definitely a movie process that I'm very fond of because it's very close to my heart, I guess. For years and years and years, I knew that I was eventually at some point going to do a full-length martial arts film. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't know when and how and which story. But I don't know if I've got on record with this yet, but I was literally in China. I was at the Shaolin Temple and I was watching an exhibition. And I've got this on video. I can probably show you. They plucked me out of the crowd to mimic one of the Buddhists doing praying mantis or some technique on stage, and of course this guy would have just absolutely kicked my ass. So I used comedy and I played around and sort of fumbled the moves and got the audience laughing because there was like 1,000 people watching. So it turned into a show. You know, I was using my acting as a way to communicate because most of the people there as well didn't speak English. But after that event, I think the electricity, you know, the spark came back at that moment, and I came out of the temple going, wow, I think I need to do that film now, you know. And I think I was on the plane coming back, starting to develop the concept and ideas in my head as I was traveling through China. And then when I came back, I started to draft.
And that first draft, how long did it take, and how was it different from the last draft?
Well, good question. The draft that it became, funnily enough, and you're going to laugh because you'll relate to this, it was a loose treatment for Jasper 2.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty cool. I wouldn't mind seeing Jasper 2, actually. Yeah.
So if you watch Jasper and then you watch Gweilo and imagine that Joseph is Jasper, you can kind of see where it was going. But then it was completely restructured because I always loved the concept of Jasper 2, but what I did is amalgamated that with the new, fresh approach, I guess, and then put it together, changed the title. But then Jasper 2, I only had maybe Act 1 written, and then Act 2 and 3 became Gweilo. Because, you know, when you're inspired and you just want to make a film concept, sometimes you've got to dig into what's readily available, you know, and I have several scripts that may be in different stages of production. So that one was easy to kind of transcribe and get going and get off the ground, if that makes sense.
How hard was it to attract technicians and talent and actors and such?
It's funny because I was doing a commentary earlier on and I was talking about the fact that I use a lot of female DOPs and that was the same case here, except it was Hayley, who I had already met and had heard about and had rave reviews about and would recommend. And I thought I really want to do a film with her because she's got that electric energy, and I needed someone young and fast, and I wanted to shoot multicam, and she had all the gear. So it was kind of a no-brainer. So it was like, okay, this is the film to work on with her, you know. And so crew for me is almost like cast. You know, there's always people that come into your life that you sort of, well, I do sort of compartmentalize and I go back to and I think, oh, I'm going to work with them on this and I'll work with them on that and I'll save this person or I'll come back to her. And, you know, that's kind of how it works. And quite often, you know, an actor comes in auditions and you don't use them in that film and you use them in the next film. I mean, that happens to me all the time. But the most, I guess, the fun part of Gweilo was being able to delve into the multicultural aspect of it and actually showcase and cast and audition and then use the people that I thought were the best in this city when I was casting. I mean, there was hundreds, if not thousands, for this that came through, and through all channels. I remember talking to Jet Tranter, and and she couldn't because she was doing something else. And then she pops up on Lady Bloodfight DVD. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm saying, like. Even the best of the best, and even Anne Truong as well at one point, you know, she was attached and she's gone on to do bloody Hard Target 2. Do you know what I mean? So
wow. You mean Hard Target 2, like as in the sequel to the Jean-Claude Van Damme
That's
film?
Correct, yeah. It was Scott Adams, yeah, that's right. Oh. So, she was originally cast as one of the Masked Avengers. It was going to be Anne and Binny, and then it ended up being Binny and Joanne Nguyen instead. But what I'm trying to say is I literally did see everybody who's anybody when it comes to the Asian casting aspect of the movie.
So we'd all love to be in the studio system in the 1970s, living in that dream world of being stars and being filmmakers, with pure creative visions like Dennis Hopper, being able to use cocaine as well as direct a film about a village in the mountains that built a stick camera, which is what's called the last movie by Dennis Hopper. It's the one that was lost, apparently. But anyway, we'd all love to do that, but the sad reality is the filmmaking process is not just 100% dedicated to the film process. You have to live day to day almost as though you're going to take it an opportunity to contribute a bit to the film world, but also contribute a bit to your own life. How did you balance doing day-to-day activities, I guess you could say, existing from week to week, as well as shooting a feature film?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you always ask good questions, buddy.
Thanks.
No, look, brother, I think the thing is, it's interesting. You kind of, when you are juggling all those hats, you really have to get into a mindset where you are not only physically fit and able, but you've got to compartmentalize, and you've got to have an equal amount of balance, which is diet, relaxation, fun, work, play. I mean, you really got to be able to do it all, but you do have constraints. So, for example, Gweilo, Joseph Lucky, the character, he's a martial artist. Holy shit, I've got to go back and do side splits. So we're talking at least 3 months of stretching before the movie starts. It's funny because when I do side splits in the film, some people laughed and they thought it was CGI, but it's actually real. I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
And so, yeah, absolutely.
I thought you were doing it. I didn't think it was CGI.
I've had a few. It's been really weird. I've had a few people laugh and go, "Oh, how'd you do that shot?" And we're talking about it. I'm doing the friggin' side splits. It's real. Wake up. So, it's kind of funny. But, yeah, so you sort of, 3 months prior, you're stretching because you've got to do that. And, I mean, I have to devise a huge schedule, for all different departments because you've got casting, you're still drafting a script, you've got to get locations, then you've got to friggin' stretch. And then it's really, what I call superhuman stuff. And sometimes it's not fun. And your friends and family are kind of like, what the hell are you doing to yourself? But, it's all about the prize, okay? And, it's like what you put in is what you get out. And if you're not willing to go all the way, well, you're not going to get the results. You're not going to have anything that's memorable. You know what I mean? People keep saying to me, oh, I'm going to write a book. I should write a book. I'm like, just write the friggin' book. You know what I mean? Speaking of which, I don't know whether you knew or not, but the Gweilo's also got an ebook, which is the first full-length novel I've written. It's 35,000 words. And I wrote that around about the time of shooting. And, mate, I did that as well. Do you know what I'm saying? Like on top of everything else. So there's really no excuses. Do you know what I mean? For people sort of going, oh, well, I should have done this. So I think I'll do that. You just got to do it, mate. You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. You don't know if the world's going to friggin' implode. We don't know what's going to happen. So you just get out there and do this shit as soon as you can.
In regards to casting, so the casting department, it says someone else in the credits.
The casting department of Gweilo?
Yeah.
Oh, you clever man. Someone's finally figured it out. Now, that's a poignant moment, my friend. I can tell you what, I'm not even going to say anything, but after the pod, I want you to go back and read the name very carefully and see what you make of it.
No, I've got it down here. It's Han Olsen.
Okay, now think about the Scrabble game in Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, Nathan Hill.
It's a friggin' anagram, dude.
See, that's what the question was. I thought it was going to be a great question about you unleashing your duties to someone else who is less professional than you. But you just did the casting yourself. So we'll go with your question.
Actually, bro, you know what? Now that you reminded me, the casting on this movie, I kid you not. But yeah, man, you just reminded me. The casting of Gweilo took a year. And I'm not talking, there's no joke. I mean, I'm talking like nearly every day something was worked on. That took a year. And that was to get those particular characters for those particular parts in Melbourne that were Asian, but that could also speak English. And this is quite a task. Yeah. This is a lot of dynamics.
And could act as well. So
yeah, that's right. And some of them had to know martial arts. So, there's a lot of, it's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot going on there to pull that off. So that was a whole job in itself. That could have just been one person doing that. I mean, it's ridiculous that I was doing that as well, now in retrospect.
Okay, Sidney Lumet says casting is, it changes depending on how old he is. So he said it's 80 to 90% of the job of a director.
Couldn't agree more.
So, I mean, how does that philosophy, I guess, interpret into your day-to-day activities that you're working on set?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think what I've learned in also working in casting full-time, because I've worked in so many different areas of entertainment, from camera assist to, casting to producer to cameraman to God knows what. I mean, I've really, that's what I'm doing is I'm moving around all departments and fine-tuning and bettering myself in other areas because I'm learning about the other areas, if that makes sense. And I think with the casting as well, I've learned that it really is imperative. I mean, it's so much of what we see, like Sidney Lumet said, it's 80%. I totally agree with that. And the casting process for me has made me a stronger director. I mean, I saw an interview with Tony Scott. I think it was Tony Scott, and he was saying that he was doing, he was a visual arts major, and he was working in advertising for like 6 years before he directed a movie. Do you know what I mean? And now that I'm working professionally in casting, I can sort of relate to that, and I can see how, you know, working in one area makes you stronger in another ultimately.
Was it easy to diversify the duties?
I think it was, you know, having, you know, a proper, you know, associate producer, which on this one was Michael Hugh. It was, you know, he took a bit of the load off for me. I think he realised. I mean, he initially came in with his company Mango Moon to do the catering, and we got along, you know, like a house on fire. And then he said, "Look, you know, I make films too. This is a pretty big task. Why don't you let me?" You know, lend more of a hand. And I said, well, look, you want to be associate producer, I can definitely use you. And that's what we did. So I think having him in one of the departments there made it a little easier. But, you know, every actor really brought their A game. So I didn't have to work much. I mean, I rehearsed the movie as I always do. And I also videotape my rehearsals, and then I cut my rehearsals. So quite often I'll then, you know, on the last rehearsal, I'll show the actors how it's going to cut. And sometimes I'll even show the crew so they can go, oh, okay, that's what we're making. I'm big on pre-production, and I'm really kind of not offended, but I'm getting a little bit sick of this point and shoot nonsense and people sort of getting on Facebook and asking for crew members and stuff like that. It's really lazy, you know, and I find it a bit desperate. Like, you know, we've talked about this. I'm not really big on the crowdfunding and the begging and the this and that. You know, I'm come from the old school principles of, you know, finding the right people and taking your time and getting it right. And I don't like point and shoot. You know, that's why people are called directors of photography, and you've got people like Grips and so forth, because you've got to light the friggin' scene. Do you know what I mean? So, and, you know, look, I've made a few movies more of late that have been shot by day. That's more of a cost saving environment. You know, you don't have to rely on as much lighting, but I much prefer and embellish and relish the moments in my hide and seek and my tomboys and those films where there is, you know, there's serious lighting and you're using film technique and you're creating a world. You're not just pointing and shooting. Do you know what I mean?
Do you remember this is not to do with Gweilo, but do you remember what camera you used on Tomboys?
Well, here's the thing. Every time I've shot, it's always been cutting edge. I've always had, you know, the latest camera. I mean, for example, you know, Jasper technically was the first feature shot on a 5D. That's a fact. Yeah. That's actually a fact. Some people probably think, oh yeah, hearsay, bullshit. It's a fact. Like when it came out, I got in touch with Canon. I said, I want your demo models. They said, oh wow, this will be the first feature. I said, yes. So, you know, things like that. But going back to Tomboys, that was, because it was a while ago now, that was the last SD film before HD came in. Professional. Really? Yes, it was technical. Like it was, I saw it on a list somewhere. It might have been like an Australian database. It was a spreadsheet. I saw it was technically it was like, you know, the last SD feature to come out of like Australia or something. And then, but of course, you know, you upscale it anyway. I've got a ProRes version or whatnot, but HD that's been upscaled. But technically, it was the last SD movie. I can't remember the model of the camera though. It was too long ago.
So, Gweilo, how long did it take to finish in terms of production, and what was the process going on to post-production like?
Gweilo was pretty good, Seb, because Gweilo from sort of development to shoot to post to screening was pretty quick. It was probably 2 years. It wasn't that long, but I think that's a credit to the whole team and as we were talking about the electricity. That film just really wanted to get made, and it came out real quick. Sometimes, you know, energy's different. You know, sometimes some movies need to age like wine. Sometimes some movies don't even want to be born. In fact, you just reminded me, have you seen that horror film, I Don't Want to Be Born? I think it was like a Rosemary's Baby ripoff or something. It was like a B version.
With Joan Collins, right?
Yeah, oh my God.
And who puts a curse on Joan Collins.
Yeah.
And she gives birth to the devil's baby. And I have the poster actually in storage. The original poster of I Don't Want to Be Born. And it's basically on it is a hand clutching a knife, but underneath the hand, two legs sprouted out from the wrist of the hand, and it's like running towards the titles. Like this weird sentient hand trying to kill you with scissors. Yeah.
Well, the one I've got is actually the VHS Slick and it's a little bit different. The one I've got's a bit more like a Rosemary's Baby ripoff, where the pram's on top of the mountain. But mate, that's awesome. You got the poster. That's ridiculous. I mean,
I got it because of the poster, but I do remember the film, and I thought it was okay. I did like the poster a lot more.
Like you and I are probably the only two people in Melbourne that have freaking got any merchandise for that movie. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous, which is what I love. So good on you, brother. I've got to show you some of my rare posters too. I've just found some absolute. You'll die when you see these.
Anyway, back to Gweilo. So you just finished answering the. How did the "I don't want to be born" thing come about?
Because I said some movies don't want to be born. We're talking.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's pretty clever, actually.
It's good, isn't it?
Anyway, so the editing process of Gweilo, how long did that take?
Well, I think with me, it's always kind of like, which is what we learned at film school, always have 3 on the go. It doesn't matter what stages they're at, but just have 3 on the go. So I probably would have had, definitely would have had Gweilo in post, and then there would have been, something else in pre-production, probably colorblind, and then I would have been writing something else. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's the same as where I'm at now. I mean, Gweilo's finished, great, but I'm also cutting colorblind, and I've shot portrait. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, and I think with Gweilo though, it just really wanted to be born. So, we pumped that out as quickly as we could, but not without any compromise, though. So the composition that Gerard Mack's done is phenomenal. I mean, it's won multi-awards. It's a character in the film. I mean, he's picked up the Prestige Gold Award at the Prestige Film Awards in the US. He's also won Best Score for Melbourne Underground Festival 2016. We also won Best Action Film at the Indie Gathering, which is a massive festival in America. We also got, oh my God, what did we get? Best Supporting Actress Trisha Devisha, who you've had on the show. Yeah. We got Best Film, but it was runner-up, but it's still good. It was still Best Film. We actually also got official selection action on film, but I didn't follow up with it. I was preoccupied with other stuff, but that definitely would have won in one of those categories as well. So, we've ended up with about 8 awards or something around, internationally. It's been a huge success on a festival circuit. And I think I mentioned to you earlier, I'm just talking to Kung Fu Magazine at the moment, so I'm trying to do a scoop on that, which it's got a huge fan following. I mean, we're talking right back to bloody Bruce Lee, for God's sake. So, Gweilo is interesting because just when you think it's over, it's really just begun, and so I'm right at the moment, I'm in the middle of another press release and media release, and I've got distributor, and I'm soon to announce, the first medium that's going to be released on, and it's kind of all happening right now, so it's very exciting.
In regards to completing the shoot, what have been the majority of the positive outcomes?
It's interesting because as a result of shooting this film, I've really been able to meet some childhood idols. The first being Richard Norton, who is, if anyone knows in the action film world, the guy's an Australian icon, for God's sake. He's a master of the arts and a film star, for God's sake. He's currently working on X-Men, and I was just looking at him on a featurette the other night for Suicide Squad. So this guy choreographs, fight choreographs, all the Hollywood films, and we met up and he heard about Gweilo. So what I'm trying to say is that the movie, me actually going out there as a lead and making a proper martial arts film has actually helped me. In my personal life to, touch base with some legends, people that I aspire to be like, and aspire to make films that they've also done. I don't know if you picked up on social media, but I also had a chance during this whole process to meet Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yes, I did. And he ended up doing an Ultra-Tune commercial that's directed by a friend of mine, Shannon Young, who did Razor Eaters. So that was amazing. The one commercial he did, and it was directed by a mate of mine, so that was awesome.
I did see the Ultra-Tune one. It makes no sense whatsoever, that ad.
Yeah.
As a great ad. Yeah.
So it gives a shit, that's right. And then the other thing that happened, it was kind of like, for me, it was like a hat trick, because I sort of met Richard and I met Van Damme, and then I actually went and did a masterclass, martial arts class with Dan Inosanto. And I don't know if you know who that is, but he's Bruce Lee's best friend, and he's in the Game of Death. Do you remember the scene? Have you seen Game of Death?
A few times, yeah.
Okay, so Bruce Lee's got the yellow jumpsuit and he makes his way up the pergola to fight all the different masters. Do you remember there's a level where he fights a guy with red nunchucks? He's like a Filipino eskrima martial artist.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's Dan Asanto.
Really?
Yeah. So I did a masterclass with him end of last year, and it was phenomenal. This is like guys. I've watched that fight scene, a million times. So to actually then meet the guy was just ridiculous. And these are all things that have happened, as a result of this film. So, for me personally, so it's just been amazing. I've met 3 idols, and Richard I'm still talking to now. I just talked to him the other night, so I'm going to catch up when he gets back from shooting X-Men. So it's just great. And Richard's actually did a film with Jane Badler here many, many years ago called Iron Fist. And one of my actual senseis, one of my instructors, David No, he was also in that film. So, the martial arts world, it's interesting because it's sort of smaller than you think. Like once once you're in it, you can sort of play dot to dot very quickly, because the martial arts stars, they all know each other. You know what I mean? So it's been great, man. It's been a real wild ride.
Before we stop, I just wonder, I don't know why I didn't ask you this before. I think I did because I didn't know you that well, and I thought it'd be impolite to ask. But you did Queen of the Damned. You were an actor. You were a vampire in that, but you're also thanked in the movie Saw. Like, can you go into that at all? I
can. That was actually the short film that the guys made to get funding or to get on the map. So you see what they did, they shot a short film first, which I was asked to location scout. I think I told you in another pod that the screenplay had hit my desk along with Wolf Creek, but this was when no one knew who the hell the guys were. But as far as the short goes, I did work on that, but I didn't really know the guys very well. I was asked to do it through another connection that was on set. But that was ultimately the short that got them the funding to make the feature, and that's when they went to LA. So because Paul Moda, one of my good friends, he also acted in that short. So that's that was I guess in a way it was kind of like their pilot. So, there was a few of us hardcores that worked on that in Melbourne before that kind of all took off.
There's actually quite a lot of merchandise regarding the distribution of this film, or the film itself, I should say, going along with the release. Could you go into details about the merchandise?
Look, it was really that, you know what I'm like. I'm such a huge collector of action figures and movie memorabilia and toys, posters, the whole bit. I collect so much stuff, so many different things. And so I was kind of like finally an opportunity to try and maybe make an action figure. So I got a prototype made of the Joseph Lucky. And I'm also looking to a couple of other avenues for other characters, which I'm not going to release just yet. But there's some other stuff being done on the side. I guess it was finally having a movie where I had an opportunity to do that. So, if you look at the pitch package, you can actually find this on the official Facebook page for Revenge. You can see the full press kit now online. Every page is there. So if you go to photos and scroll through, and there's actually a merchandise page, concept merchandise. And the concept merchandise, some of it is concept, but some of it is real. Whether I'm able to actually release some of this stuff later through my side or not, I'm not too sure, because I'm right in the middle of distribution deal at the moment. So it depends on how far they want to push it. But there's some really cool stuff that's been created. So, there's a graphic novel, and there's the action figures, and there's like paper dolls and various posters and things like that. So it's just been a chance to kind of, sort of embellish in all that really cool, fun stuff that I collect myself, for all types of movies.
Any news on the distribution? I mean, when are we going to finally see this masterpiece?
It's in the works. I won't say it right now, but you'll know within the next few weeks, definitely before Christmas, what's happening. But it's a success story in itself, and the movie's come a long way, and it's been a real journey. And as I said before, just when you think it's over, really it's only just about to begin. So that's what the crazy part of being a director. You can work on something for 3 years, and when people have forgotten about it, that's when the public begin to experience experience it. It's a very weird process that you go through, but that happens every time. People say to me, and my friends that are filmmakers, oh, how do you keep going? How do you do it? Look, the thing is, I've just always been doing it. And I was sort of saying before, you've always got to have 3 on the go because you've got to keep yourself interested. There's no point sort of having one film where it is going to take 3 years before sort of you see anything. Of course, it's going to drive you nuts. So for me, it's like this happened with iPortrait. That got shot because I was in post on Colorblind and I couldn't get to a certain section without waiting on other people to finish other films they were on. It's a timing thing. So rather than kind of sit around and just waste time and wait for Colorblind to be finished, I was like, well, I'll just start putting the next one into production. And that's how iPortrait was born. Do I press pause? Do I just put myself on ice, or do I kind of keep moving? And that's what it's like, man. You need to learn how to kind of keep moving in all those different avenues, I guess, as best you can if you've got the energy to do it.
And to wrap things up, why don't you give us your favourite line?
Favourite line from the movie would have to be, I've still got a few tricks up my sleeve.
You said it the exact same thing. Anyway, Nathan Hill, thank you very much for this impromptu interview.
And make your strike a lucky one.
This series was produced by Sebastian Mittelman and devised by William Thompson and Sebastian Mittelman. Stay alive till next time. Oh, and a very special thanks to our associate producer, Nathan Hill.